In this video, I want to show you a few more dictionary methods, the class method from keys and dictionary comprehension. As you can see here, I have a person dictionary containing 4 key value pairs. And down here, I am calling a print function. And in the print function, I am going to call the keys method on my person dictionary. And when I type in .keys and my parentheses and mouse over this, we'll see that it says it returns a set-like object providing a view on D's keys, where D is the dictionary that we are calling this method from. And if I run this, we'll see that I get this output down here that says dict keys, and then in parentheses it has this list containing our keys. There's also a method to retrieve just the values, and it is values. So I'm going to type .values in here. And if I mouse over, it says it returns an object providing a view on D's values. Again, where D is the dictionary we are calling this method with. And if I run this, I get this output that says dict values, and then in parentheses it has a list containing the values up here. And then we also have a method that returns both the keys and the values, and that is .items. And if I mouse over this, it says it returns a set-like object providing a view on D's items. So when I run that, I get this dict items, and then in the parentheses, I get a list of tuples that contain 2 elements, the key and the value associated with that key in each of those tuples. There are different ways to make use of this information. One way is by using a for loop to iterate through this information. So I could do for key in person.keys, and then in this for loop, I will simply print the value of key. And key is just a variable, so I could have named this anything I wanted. And if I run this, we'll see that I get these outputs of first name, last name, age, and state. And if I wanted to, I could use this to access these keys and do anything that I might need to do with them. The same works for values. So if I wanted, I could say for value in person.values and print the value out. And if I run this, we'll get the outputs of John, Smith, 30, and Florida. Now, if I were to do this with the items method, because it returns a list of tuples, I would need 2 variables over here. And since the first one is key, I'll put in key, and then the second one is value, so I'll keep that as value. And I will change this to items. And then in my print function, I will change this to say key, comma, value. And if I run that, we'll get the output first name John, last name Smith, age 30, and state Florida. And just to be clear, these are just variable names, so I could have made these anything I want, such as K and V. And if I did KV down here, it would work just the same way. But since I am using the names key and value, and that's how we refer to dictionaries, I just want that to be clear that these are just variable names. It can be anything you want them to be as long as they're a valid Python identifier. So now I want to show you the dictionary class method from keys. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all this information here, and I'm going to go ahead and create a list containing the values 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now to use the class method, I am going to first create a variable that I'm going to call my_dict equals, and then I'm going to type the name of the class, which is dict, dot, and then call the class method, which in this case is the from keys method. And it tells us that it creates a new dictionary with keys from iterable and values set to value. Now the iterable is going to be the list that I just created, so I'm going to pass that in as my first argument. And if I don't put anything in for a value, it's just going to default to none. So if I were to print my dict here, down here, we're going to see I get a dictionary containing the keys 1 through 5, which is what my list is, but each of the default values were set to none. Now I could put a comma here and make this any value that I wanted. So if I wanted to set them all to be hello world, I could. And if I run that, we'll see now my dictionary contains the keys 1 through 5, but now all the values are set to hello world. Now let's say I wanted my dictionary values to be an empty list. So in here, I will pass it an empty pair of square brackets. And if I run this, we'll see that I get a dictionary with the keys 1 through 5, and each value is set to an empty list. Now, if I were to say my dict and pass in my key 1 and append a value of high to that list, and run this again, we'll see that it's actually going to put high in every single list. That is because when you use the from keys method, the value that it's initializing for each of the dictionary keys is all referencing the same object. So if it's an immutable object, such as a number or a string or a tuple, it's not a big deal. But if it's a mutable object like a list, you'll get this result here. So to fix this, we can use dictionary comprehension instead. And the way dictionary comprehension works is I would use a pair of curly braces, and then I would pass in a variable that is going to end up being the key, and then I would do an expression. And in this case, I am going to say empty list for the variable that's going to be my key in, and then I could put any sequence in here, but I am going to put in my list. I'm going to go ahead and comment this out so that that piece of code right there doesn't run. I just want to see my list. So when I run this, we'll see that I do in fact get a dictionary containing the keys 1 through 5 with empty lists in each one of them. And if I uncomment this out now, when I run this, it is going to append this first list here to have the value high in it. And when I run that, we'll see that I do in fact get this list that has high in it for key 1, and key 2, 3, 4, and 5 were not affected. And I could also do something else for this list. So if I wanted to, I could initialize different values. I could say x to the power of 2 for each x in my list, where x is the elements of this iterable. Let me remove this because that will cause a problem. And if I run this now, we'll see that I get a dictionary containing the keys 1 through 5, and the values are the square of those keys. And just as a quick reiteration, if you wanted to create a dictionary with a set amount of keys initialized to a specific value, you would use the class method from keys. And if you want to create a number of dictionaries with distinct values, you would use dictionary comprehension.